Hey guys, in today's video, we're gonna talk about wide, narrow, wide, a swing concept I want you to understand that's the secret to why a lot of pros hit the ball so well. All right guys, so let's talk about wide, narrow, wide. Now before we dive into that, I wanna make sure you guys are aware of CogornoGolf.com. CogornoGolf.com is our membership site. It's our online community full of golfers like you and I looking to improve our game with each other. Now on CogornoGolf.com, you get access to a ton of different things. Most importantly, you get access to our Facebook group where you can post your swing videos. I can look at them and I personally give you feedback on the main priorities you need to work on and how to do those. You also get access to all of the content on our site. You get access to the member library, the practice sections, quick fix sections, all of our master classes and everything we produce, you get access as a member. So we'd love for you guys to check that out. We'll put a link in the description down below. Now let's talk about this wide, narrow, wide. And what I want to do this video for is sort of clarification of some of the other videos we've done before and make sure you guys are aware of the concepts here. Now, when I was growing up, and still now, one of the concepts that I always heard to describe what good players do in good swings was this wide, narrow, wide. Now, what I was told that meant was this. That meant that during the backswing, you're supposed to go wide on the way back. And when I say wide, I mean wide with the hands and the club head, meaning like farther away from the target. So we go wide back, narrow in transition, so meaning the hands and club closer to the target, closer to me, narrow through impact, and then wide again past impact. And that conceptually, for some people, works really well. I'm not saying there's anything incorrect about that. Wide on the way back, narrow the circle here, and wide on the way through. But really what I see good players doing, and what we did in our video of how the pros start their downswing, was kind of explaining that what we see happen is actually this. We see wide early in the downswing, narrow from there through impact, and wide again into the follow through. So I would kind of put a little caveat on that if you're going to use this to say it's really wide, wide, narrow, wide. Meaning what I don't see a lot of the good pros do, some of them with high speeds do it, they go wide, right to narrow, and then to wide. But what would be better for most of us watching, and what a lot of them do, and as your speed goes lower, what's more advantageous is keeping some width of the arms and hands in transition until about left arm parallel, getting more narrow with the hand path in the arc through impact, and then getting wider with it again in the follow through. Before we talk through the details of that, I want to show you a video of a couple of swings of some really good ball strikers and kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. Then we'll come back and we'll go over the details. Okay, so let's take a look here at the width portions early. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Adam Scott. This is just him hitting a short iron. And while not all good ball strikers look exactly the same as this is a good model for us to use. Now, the first thing I want to show you is the wide, narrow, wide in terms of the downswing. So we'll take a simple look here at kind of where the butt of the club is, and I'll just draw circles along the way. And let's take a look at where the hand path, where the butt of the club goes. So this is just going to mark where his hands are. Remember when we said width or not, kind of relative to the target line. So here are his hands in space. What we'll see is from the top of the backswing through to left arm parallel, so the first foot or so, notice the butt of the club actually works slightly away from the target, right? So that circle actually got slightly farther away, or at minimum, and at least maintained its distance away from the ball and the target. That would be the maintaining width part we're talking about. Now from here, if we draw where the butt of the club is at last parallel, we'll now start to see, okay, wait a second, now that butt of the club has gone more narrow. So notice from here, it went from going basically straight down to it working much more down and forward. That would be the narrow component, right? Still narrow, narrow, narrow. Now from there into the follow through, we'll notice it has gone back to being wide. So if we check that out here, that would be the wide component from there up until the top part here. So this being, let's go ahead and restart this here. This at the top, one more time, just with where the hands are at. He's here at the top, okay? The butt of the club doesn't just work straight down and forward this way and get narrow right away. The butt of the club from here works wide early, so he maintains width to here, and then from there it starts to get narrow down to impact. So there the butt of the club has gone narrow, and then it gets back to being wide into the follow through, right? So wide, narrow, wide being the pattern here. Now notice when we go up from the top here, I said, hey, how the shoulders are gonna work are gonna be a big part of him staying wide. So let's look at that part first. Here at the top, obviously he's got greater than 90 degrees of shoulder turn. Now what he'll do as he starts to work down into left arm parallel, he doesn't rip the chest and shoulders wide open immediately, he keeps them back for a little bit. So we'll see from here is usually 40 to 50 degrees of shoulder turn from there. So he's kept his chest away from the target just for the initial foot or so of the downswing, which allows him to maintain this width of the club and his body. And we're also talking about how the right arm is gonna work. And so in this sort of wide early, right, we'll see that from here. Let's take a look at the angle of his right arm. So from here to here, super non-scientific pattern there. And let's see where, so we have about a 105, we get at left arm parallel and the width that gets maintained. Let's check this out here. And we'll notice, let's go back one frame. So we'll notice from here that he has a greater number, right? So virtually maintained, and actually if I drew those lines a little bit better, he's widened that angle. His angle between his right arm and his shoulder has maintained and or gotten wider, and that's something common you'll see amongst a lot of really good ball strikers. So the point there, right, is wide early, and then now from here, the hand path will start to go down and forward, down and forward, down and forward, and then it'll go wide again. So there's your wide, narrow, wide downswing path. Okay, so let's go over a little bit of what we just saw there. A couple things I want to kind of keep in mind here. As a stock model for what we would be looking for in a swing, once you get up to the top of your backswing, ideally there's a full 90-degree shoulder turn, there's some width to the right arm, let's say it's 90 degrees or more, and we have some of that established. The first goal is going to be to maintain some of that width in transition. So when we go to the top here like this, and from the, let's say the top of my backswing to about first parallel, I want to maintain width. Now what does that mean? That means I want my hands and my arms, like let's say my right arm is 90 degrees, I want that to stay 90 degrees, meaning this from here to here. I want that to stay 90 degrees. If my hands are, let's say, 1.5 feet from my chest, I want them to stay 1.5 feet away from my chest. I want my right arm to maintain that bend or even widen out a little bit. Now, with my hands and arms working away from me doesn't mean that I'm throwing this way. So I don't mean width like this, I mean width like this. And a lot of times you sort of stood there with a club in your hand and you took your right arm and made it longer. That's actually going to narrow the angle of the club. It's not going to go like this automatically. So I'm talking about this sort of motion width here. The only way you can do that, and sort of the main contributing factor to the width you have, is your body turn. What we mean by that is this: the more I turn during my backswing or downswing, the more I get turned away from the target, the more width I can have. The less I get turned away from the target, the more narrow I am. So more turn means more width, hands farther from me. Less turn, my hands are going to be closer to me. That also applies for transition. So if you're someone who gets too narrow too quick, oftentimes the chest and shoulders get open too early and I'm too narrow. What I want to have happen is full turn up to the top, stay back, so your chest kind of stays back away, back to the target just for the initial little burst, and then you can get narrow and then wide. So if you are too narrow, you got to start by making sure you have a big enough turn on the way back and you stay turned back for a second. So what that would feel like here is going to be full 90, stay turned back for a second, and then let everything open up. Let's go ahead and do one of those. Full turn back, keep the chest back for a second, and then go through. And so the video we've done on that in terms of how the pros start their downswing, just want to clarify, that's my arm adding width. That's me maintaining width, not going this way, but going this way. And to do that, I need to have my chest and shoulders in appropriate position. We've done some videos before about opening the chest and shoulders right from the top, and that's a good feel or thought from those of you who keep it too close too long. But the reality is, I want from the top, and what good players will do is they'll be 90 degrees, by left arm parallel, the chest and shoulders are still back about 45. Now from this position through, the chest and shoulders are catching up to the hips, which is what allows your hand path to get more narrow, get the handle forward, and then you get width back into the follow through. So we'll hit one more, big chest turn back, keep it back in the initial transition, and then we can go narrow to wide. Good. And so what I don't want, right, and what comes up a lot is in from the kind of top of the backswing down, I don't want you to go from here to narrow right away. Me getting too narrow right away gets my shaft too vertical. I typically have lead wrist condition issues. My arc is way too narrow. My low point's too narrow. I'm gonna have typically consistency problems with the contact. I'd like to be wider earlier, then I can create those narrow pieces. So I don't mind you guys feeling narrow in through impact and then widening back out into the follow through, but I want it to be a little bit wider earlier. So one more time, let's just go through that. Good turn, good width, maintain width, then get narrow, then get wider. Now you don't have to build that all into your swing. What you have to look at is where within there are you off, and then start to train those pieces. This video is just about kind of building a concept of what it's supposed to look like. Depending upon where you're at, you may need to feel wider the whole time. You may need to feel more narrow the whole time. You have to look at where you're at relative to the medium or the average or normal, and then you have to exaggerate the opposite. So if you're someone who's here and you're super narrow right away the whole time, you have to feel a lot wider. If you're someone who's too wide and too far this way, you gotta feel more narrow. So use video, use feedback, see what side you're on. Let me help guide you through that process. If you guys have any questions about this, leave a comment down below. If you want to learn more about the turn piece, check out this video. We'll put the link first in the description down below. If you want to learn more about the width piece, check out this video. We'll put the link down in the description down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you liked the video, do us a favor, click the like button down below. Click the notification bell. Also, please subscribe if you haven't. Another reminder, every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are live here on YouTube for Rapid Fire Golf. We'd love to see you guys there.